Well, welcome to our September edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIO EdTech Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch. Thanks for joining us virtually, as we've been doing for the past several months. Always I'm hoping that we won't have that many items on the agenda, but it's still everything is occurring in very high numbers than it normally occurs with everything we have to do with school opening, which has been an interesting thing to explain to my family members of why my life has been so busy for the past 6 months. I know all of you can relate to that. We have opened up the Go Soapbox questions, and so I'm going to ask you to please.
Friday, I guess.
Or need somebody to mute there if you can.
All the different programs,
Thank you. We've opened up the Go Soapbox questions. We're going to ask all of you. We use those. Those are so important to us in responding to a variety of things during this time. So please take a look at those questions I sent this morning and log on, obviously, with EdTech, and we'll be going over those answers throughout the webcast, along with the long list of items that we have here to address. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is farewell to our interim commissioner and welcome to our new commissioner. When Kevin Brown signed up for this back, I guess, in November, he was only expecting to have to do that for about 3 or 4 months and not during the pandemic. And obviously, knowing Kevin in his capacity in the department before he went to Jefferson County and then coming back as interim commissioner, it was a fascinating experience, I think, for anybody being put into that kind of leadership role on such short notice, but also during a pandemic, which I thought he did an outstanding job within the Department of Education staff and for all the districts. I could tell by the end of it he was very worn down, as you would expect. So he's taking the next 2 weeks off before he goes back to Jefferson County. And we had a good farewell with him on Friday, which was a lot of fun, where he gave some top 10 list of the top 10 things he's not going to miss hearing. Top 10 things that he is going to miss, and so that was a fun thing that he did Friday before he took off. Dr. Jason Glass started yesterday, and he started right on his Kentucky Tonight, which he did a good job last night. So it's recorded, pre-recorded. So if you didn't watch that, it's about remote learning and really a lot of technology, and probably half of it was talking about specific technology parts in it. So I encourage you to check it out. But I thought he did a good job, and he's been joining our meetings, even though he was an acting superintendent in Colorado. He moved here with his family and bought a new home, and so he's been in the Lexington area for a few weeks, and so he's been joining our meetings at the Department of Education virtually for a while. So to kind of get a feel for what we're doing, every office sent him background about what we do, the hot topics that are there, and you're familiar with all those, as we do for new Kentucky Board of Education members. So he's pretty much up to speed. The big part that he asked us to do, as you expect, is to give him context and some background. Even though he's from Kentucky and spent some time teaching and even coaching here, he's been the equivalent of the Commissioner of Education in Iowa. He's been the commissioner of a mid-sized district and a very large district in different states. So his background suits him well for all the different kind of positions there are in a school system, including at a Department of Education. So he seems to be very comfortable with it, but he just wants to understand the context and history of things, the background of them. And so that's what I spent some time doing, even for his broadcast last night with Kentucky Tonight, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Next item is talking about the budget cut. We were notified last week that the Department of Education will have an 8% budget cut. Obviously, we know when folks say they're going to hold education harmless and hold SEEK harmless, there are lots of services beyond even Office of Education Technology that we provide to school districts, we being K, the agency, that when there's a cut to K, the agency, there is a cut to school districts. And it's been a pretty sustained cut that we've absorbed since 2008, since the housing market crisis and the other crises that have happened. We have, for our most part, done an excellent job, the best we could, with all these massive cuts, making it so you all didn't feel that. But I got to tell you, with another 8% cut, on top of the sustained cuts that we have. And keep in mind, we went into the past legislative session in 2020 asking the legislature to restore all the cuts that have happened to KETS and KIN since 2008, which we try to minimize for you and for the most part have made sure it's not impacted the KETS offer of assistance. But I got to tell you, and we're going to work through it, is the KETS offer assistance has a very high probability of being impacted now. With this kind of cut on short notice, and given we were already cut down to the bare bone before, as I suspect, and I can't give you a specific dollar figure, at the time it's a range, so it could range, right now it was $21 per student, but that can go down to $17 per student. We're going to try our best to minimize that, but there will be an impact to the KETS offer. There's no doubt about it, with all the other live services that we have going on now. And it is difficult for me, given all the importance of virtual and technology during this time, to have a cut to the service. It is an odd thing to me, but it's happening across all parts of the department, all parts of Kentucky state government. There's parts of it that folks have tried to hold harmless, and you will always seek for those folks that have been around. That always say we've held education, K-12 education, harmless because we're not cutting SEEK, and that's a good thing. I'm always appreciative of that. But there's lots of funding sources beyond SEEK that directly impact school districts, and so obviously the services that we offer through KETS and the services we offer through KIN, the Kentucky Education Network funding, the general fund funding that we get for those two services is part of the services we offer directly to students, teachers, and all the staff in schools. So we're going to be trying to figure that out over the next week or so, what that impact is. I know our first KETS offer was supposed to be $4.1 million, and then I think we had a total of close to $13 million in KETS offers over this school year, and so the first KETS offer, could be impacted by as much as $1 million instead of $4.1 million down to $3.1 million, and the future ones could be impacted up to $1.5 million. Going forward there. Like I say, we're going to be working and looking at a variety of options. We'll try our best to minimize it. But that's why it's so important for you all to because we've had these sustained cuts over the course of time since 2008, and our budget has not increased since 1992. That's why we always ask you all to help us champion during these legislative sessions, trying to get the cuts restored and even go above the cuts. So if there's ones that happen, we can somewhat, ride it out for a while. But given these have been sustained, and really it's been happening since 2003, the sustained cuts, there is nothing else, all the things that we, the best of the bad choices we've taken, and now there's some just really bad choices that we have. So we'll be working on that the best we can. I got notified that last night specifically. So we'll be. Yes.
Let's put that in a dollar per ADA context for everyone. So when we talk about the first offer, that potentially means it could go from $9 per student down to about $7.50 per student, is what that potentially could mean for the first offer, just so folks can interpret that correctly and plan accordingly.
Thank you. And then obviously there's the second offers that we have, which was $8.8 million worth. So, that brings that down as well. Like I say, we'll have some more time. It's not like I got to do it immediately, but we're briefing our new commissioner tomorrow about what that means. So obviously I'll be talking about what it means for districts not to get a KETS offer and the kind of things that goes to within a district, especially during a pandemic, the problem associated with anything technology being cut right now, given it's so essential to both the in-person classes and the virtual classes that'll be happening all during the course of this year. So want to make you aware of that very much up front. And like I say, we'll be spending time on it. And over the course of years, we have had pretty substantial cuts and been able to shield the KETS offers. But now that we know with this kind of massive cut, on short notice, given on top of the cuts we've already taken, there will be an impact on the CATS offers. And like I say, we'll try to minimize it as much as possible, but there's only so much that we're going to be able to do going forward. The CARES funding, which is a temporary funding source, I did want to give an update to that. That is one plus side of. For example, I know the CATS offers would normally have gone toward a lot of things in districts as far as buying, for example, and replacing computers, laptops, and desktops, which is it's fortunate during the time we do at least have the CARES funding and it can be used for that. I know a lot of districts have been using a very high percentage of that money, and based upon the questions we've asked you all before, to address the students that don't already have it. A good example was given last night in Covington by the Covington superintendent, Alvin Garrison. He talked about, and we've talked about this before, they already had a one-to-one from, I think it was 6th grade up to 12th grade, but they didn't have it from kindergarten to 5th, and so they've been addressing that. And I assume by the end of all this, this pandemic, we were one of the first states, and not the first state to have one-to-one computer ratio, but it was not a mobile computer ratio. We had a lot of desktops and labs, and then libraries, and especially the younger grades where they use project-based learning. Whereas during a high percentage or a full school doing virtual, those desktops sitting in the labs are not very helpful or valuable. So districts have been moving to a more mobile solution for that, and hopefully some of the CARES funds can offset the CATS offers being reduced this year, and hopefully that's not an impact of future years beyond this one. You always worry about reducing it because people get locked into it, but it's not, as I understand it, the cuts we're taking right now are not permanent ones, but we do have an upcoming legislative session where it's going to be important to voice the importance of restoring the cuts to all the technology funding items, KEN and CATS, for the long term, and not take more cuts on top of that are more permanent in nature. I'm going to ask folks to give an update on specific talking about the CARES funds and an update on those funding sources. So let's first of all talk about Marty. I think this is a good place for you to give an update on the PD for the teachers. We have portion of the CARES funds that could be used for to help out with teachers with digital learning. So Marty, if you could give an update on that portion of the CARES funds. You ready to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So we actually had a multi-tiered approach with CARES Act funds. If you recall, in terms of professional learning, of course, we launched our digital learning design labs with education cooperatives, and funding has gone into that work. The really great thing from a state perspective, from a KDE perspective and an OET perspective with our CARES Act fund is that we've really taken those funds and been able to work directly to get those to our schools and districts. And so that's one angle that has been very successful, and that work continues to grow. So each education cooperative is taking that work and expanding it to see what kind of additional help each and every district needs in terms of designing for this type of learning, this type of instruction, whether that's digital, blended, remote, or virtual learning. Another angle, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. David, if you can let me know that you can see it.
Can see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So another strategy that we've worked towards is being able to provide a digital learning coach stipend match program. Now, please keep in mind, this is a brand new program for us. We've never designed a program like this. And now there are parts of it that are super familiar. There are many components of this strategy that feel very familiar with CATS offers of assistance. So obviously that helps us. But in terms of using federal funds to extend this type of support, we now have a process in place. And our team at OET has worked really hard. Shout out to Rebecca Bright and Mike Lettingham and Amy Young for helping move this work forward to create a process that we can easily take something that we know is helpful and that we believe in terms of professional learning for maximizing the effective use of technologies, and then expand that into a full-fledged program that we can offer. And so today, if you have not already, our field staff will be sending a note out to you as EdTech leaders and also your superintendents, especially because it has financial impact, with very clear instructions. We're going to make sure that we all agree with this belief statement and goal. Definitely during this time of urgent access to highly effective digital learning strategies, this stipend match program can be super helpful. Now, if you already have digital learning coach positions or roles identified in your school district, then this is just a support mechanism for that. But if you do not, and so we know that around 115 districts have already had something in place, and other districts are starting to come on board with that. But then we still have a group of districts that this will be your very first kind of inaugural work into having identified positions. And so we're going to match dollar for dollar, and some very fine details that are important to you are that this is it's targeted as a 2-year district level support. However, we are matching up front with this stipend program that full amount that you will be able to extend throughout the work. And again, this is one-time funding, right? So this program is designed as one-time funding. We're targeting dedicated time for internal district or school level digital learning coach related work. This is dedicated time during or after traditional instructional time. And the funding match options are pretty clear. It's either dollar for dollar matched by you, or it's recognizing your investment that you've already made in this work by recognizing what a digital learning coach role is and what that means. And so there's and I'm going to take you through just real quick, David, I'll speed up here. The submit a form and basic invoice. Again, this is a new process for us, but we're really pleased at how efficient it's going to be. So when you submit your form, this looks very familiar to you. And this is something that makes sense. It's exactly how you process and submit your technology plans. And so I'm going to put my email address, my region, my district. Then if you currently have a digital learning coach position, you're going to answer a couple more questions. But if you do not, then you're going to say no, and you're going to get right down to the final submission. You're going to identify what funds you are matching with, just so that can help on our end from a reporting with federal funds perspective. And then you're going to upload your invoice. And there's a template that you're going to follow, very similar to the technology plan, actually exactly like the education technology plans that you submit every year. So finally, you're going to assure that by uploading and submitting your digital learning coach stipend match plan, that you understand that these funds should be reflected appropriately on your TAR, your annual technology activity report. And so we have a Munis project number that you're going to tag with this funds, and that's 613FD. You don't have to remember that. I just wanted to point that out. And you're also going to use the appropriate commodity codes. And once you submit that, then those funds will flow to you. The big question that you probably have is, how much is it? Right now, it is $1.36 per ADA. And we've also hyperlinked your official ADA that you submit, which we also use for your CATS offers of assistance. So we're extremely excited about this work. A special note, Dave, and I'll turn it back to you. A special note that this is not about a title, job title, or a position. It's strictly about the urgent work that's in front of us and tapping the right people at the right time to help us lead this coaching work as we move forward. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Marty, and appreciate the update on that one. And thank goodness we do have a substantial amount of CARES funds that last till September of 2022 that can buy a variety of things for us, including that service. Would like to get an update from Chuck. It could be you or Phil. a combination of that on where we're at with light speed services, and even Mike, the light speed service itself, a relay, and then the analytics part that also is a service that's being offered to all school districts.
Sure, David. I'll go ahead and get us started on that. Chuck can kind of dive in where he needs to. With the Lightspeed project, we're moving forward. We have 352,000 devices currently installed with Relay. Our goal is to have every student device, teacher device installed with Relay, the Relay client by the end of this fiscal year, and then that will get us to what we call our new standard, right, Chuck? This is our new standard, and we'll get away from the old rocket kind of technology, at least for student and teacher devices. And then we're ramping up for analytics. We're finishing up the purchase of that, and we'll be turning that on very soon for school districts. And it's important that to get reporting from analytics, you have to have the Relay client on every device. So that's something that you got to kind of realize. And in addition, Lightspeed is providing a basic SIPA filtering service that's free of charge for districts that want to use that for the hotspots that they are deploying. The one thing you got to remember about that too, that's a very basic service. It is SIPA compliant, but it doesn't have any reporting or the ability to do any kind of management on that from a district's perspective. Chuck, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, Phil, I think you did a great job of covering at least, high level of where we're at. The analytics product is something we're pretty excited about. And we hope the districts are going to be also, because I think one of the questions that people ask a lot is, of the investment I've made in technology, okay, is it being maximized? And I know that's something we emphasize in our master plan, and we emphasize a lot in everything we talk about. And the analytics product is really a great step forward and helping folks gauge, usage and adoption of the technology, help us to gauge and see which products we're using that meet a lot of digital safety guidelines in terms of student privacy and some of those things. So that is absolutely something that now that we're through, I'm going to say over the hump with the Relay implementation, we're gonna now start back on the analytics implementation. That's probably going to follow the same type of process that we've had with Relay, and that Lightspeed's going to lead that effort. There's going to be a variety of different training opportunities for districts to attend, and we encourage you to do that so that you understand the power of the tools you're going to have. So yeah, once again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ping our Cats field staff, myself, Phil, Mike, any of us. But David, that's moving really, really well. And Phil, I do want to make one correction.
Okay.
We're looking to have Relay completed by the end of the calendar year, not the fiscal year. All right. And I know, trust me, we all recognize that's a pressure point for some districts with a lot of things you've got going on. We just want folks to make best effort to try and get that client deployed. And keep in mind, it's for your own benefit, your own good, because the one thing it does is protects your students, your technology, regardless of location, especially in this virtual season that we're in, which as of right now, we're not sure how long that's going to last. Right, David? So back to you.
Yep. Thanks. And I understood from Phil too that you have to go back and watch a copy of this. I thought you said calendar year or December too. So that is the point.
I did say December. I thought I did.
Yeah, but that's good. That's all right. We want to make clear that. So if we're not sure that, that's an important thing to do. I would encourage, indeed, I'm going to ask you to give an update here on Infinite Campus stuff, but I'm going to encourage once again why we're doing this. Because I want to spend time on the Go Soapbox poll questions. Please go to the link, and I don't know if we put it up here where we can actually show it. But the link I sent you this morning, please go to Soapbox and answer at least, the questions, because I'm going to start bring up questions 1 through 7 in just a moment here. But Dee Dee, if you can give an update on Infinite Campus. Dee Dee, you're on mute.
Thank you. We have 2 CARES Act initiatives in Infinite Campus. One of them is the online registration We've had 111 districts take advantage of that offering. If you were one of the districts that decided not to, it's not too late. Infinite Campus started reaching out to districts that have implemented through their support ticket, asking them about additional training that's available, resources available for them before the end of the year. Even if you didn't take advantage of it, you can submit a support ticket and ask for that assistance so that you can be ready for implementation, by January or even for the following year. So that offering is still open for everybody, and we've gotten really good feedback. But this really provides districts this additional one-on-one consulting time really provides districts an opportunity to fine-tune this to bring further efficiencies for their districts, whether it be forms that they need to get out or something else that they need to collect through a better process, and can use the online registration to do that. The second CARES Act initiative in Infinite Campus is the campus learning. We've had 125 districts opt in to use campus learning. Of that, about 85 have been for specifically for the Google Classroom integration. I know I had one more asked today if there was still time to opt in. There is, but we're going to cut that off as of October 1. So if you've been thinking about it and weren't sure if you were really going to do this or not this year, it's time to make the final decision. You'll still have another opportunity next year, but for purposes of the money that's been allocated to this program and deciding, what resources are left out of that pot of money, October 1 will be the deadline for opting into campus learning for the 2020-2021 school year. Same process for campus learning. There is some additional training opportunities available. Campus is going to reach out to districts through their support ticket, ask them, how they would like to take advantage of their half-a-day training. If you have items in mind for either of these offerings and you want to partner with another district, or if something you want to do regionally, you may have some more time that you could really fine-tune something with the amount of hours allocated to, be something greater than you can on your own. So be creative there. Infinite Campus is willing to work with us on utilizing these hours, but they do need to be used by the middle of December. Now, and keep in mind, this same level of training, the same level of project management that we've seen this first year is not going to be available for the second year. So if you can, please take advantage of it while we've got the funds to offer this training for you. Those are the two CARES Act initiatives, David.
Thank you, Dee Dee.
All right.
And these are part of the 10% funds that were identified as state shared services. And I'm hoping that you all have been part of your own discussions about the $204 million that went down to districts that could be used to purchase technology, a wide variety of it, with the ESSER funds of $174 million, and then the GEAR funds, which were split between feeding and technology of $30 million to bring it up to $204 million. So I'm hoping you're at that table and pushing for their technology needs, and you can probably further make your case for that, given that you can let them know that you're going to be receiving a cut in the CAT's offers of assistance, and have even more of a need from that was previously planned to be put in place. The last item, and Marty, I know we're working through this, is just the that we call it the next generation of virtual schools, and trying to partner with different organizations that are already doing this or looking at doing this. We don't have a firm thing to share with you today. I know Marty's working on that in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We hope to know the kind of the direction that we're going with that. Marty, is there anything else I know we talked about this yesterday. Anything else you want to add to that?
We did. Well, I just to recognize that number one, when we say virtual school, we are referring to full-time enrolled virtual and enrolled students. These are students who are not assigned to traditional classroom teachers. There's such a mix of when we're thinking about remote learning and NTI with traditionally assigned classroom teachers. When we move forward with this statewide work, virtual means virtual enrolled students, and that's important to distinguish, number one. Number two, it's a moving target. We've had right now we have about 15 school districts who have established virtual academies. And again, these are full-time enrolled virtual school students, as David refers to, next generation Kentucky Virtual High School. And so we're moving forward right now with the planning that we had in place. However, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to solidify and share what that means for us. It is a moving target. Those plans are changing rapidly, as you all know, and as you are implementing your virtual academies right now. So thanks, David.
Thank you. We'll talk about the last component. There was $212 million made available to school districts in CARES funds. A good portion of those could go back to March 13th of 2020 all the way up to September of 2022. In fact, like I said, 204 million of that. We'll be talking about in a minute about the $8 million to bring that total to $212 million. That goes back to 1 March. It can be split up to 30 December. And I wanted to give you a chance to populate your responses, because I'm going to talk about them in the context of the last mile and also the Kentucky Tonight Show last night that spent a large portion of its time on just devices that students have outside the school building and internet that students have. So it's always helpful for me to get the current pulse, according to you all, the best estimates you have or swag that you have of that, as I'm talking to audiences, because there's a tendency, and this happens for folks, and it's important to understand not to underestimate the problem, but when you overestimate it significantly, it looks like it's hopeless. So I've always been, what is truly, how close can we get? And I can't get 100% perfect, but how close, are we really? Are we 99% broke for 99%, or 1% broke for 1%? And we always address the 1% broke, but when you're hearing that it's 40% broke or 50% broke, it becomes a hopeless type of thing. And there's just the issue that we have with a lot of folks trying to present something as 40% broke or 50% broke, when really it may be just be 5 or 10%, which becomes very doable to address on average. And I understand there's certain districts in certain parts of our state that have a significant larger percentage of issues than in the other parts of our state, and we've talked about that in the past. But on average, of trying to address the problem, so we really can see how big it is or how big it isn't going forward. But I didn't want to spend some time before I kind of go through the last mile RFP and the last mile $8 million of funding and the Kentucky Tonight Show. I want to talk a bit about the announcement that was made yesterday during the governor's press conference. And I try to give you all a heads up about anything that's technology enabled that anyone in your district will be, folks in your district will be interacting with, even though it's not something you built, that you bought. I found as a CIO, I stick my nose into anything that's technology enabled, because if it doesn't go right, 99% of the time, the CEO blames the CIO. So I stick my nose in it and try to understand it the best I can. And so this is one of those. The Department of Public Health, which is in the Cabinet of Health and Family Services in Kentucky state government. So these are totally separate organizations from the Department of Education. Talked yesterday, Department of Public Health talked about the release of this new technology-enabled system that they have created. And want to give you some background, the best I understand it. Obviously, KD agency is not leading that. OET is not leading that. I'm just kind of aware of it and trying to make you aware of it the best I can. But this is the COVID-19 reporting for students in the school that have it or staff in the school that have it. It's my understanding that the process is that if someone in a school, whether it be a student or staff member, gets COVID-19 or is in quarantine, there is a responsibility, the best I can tell, to report that to your local health department. And some specifics about who that is, not just the numbers, but specifics about who that is. And there's a lot of good reasons about contagious diseases that you want to do that, so you can understand where it's at and trying to contain it just that location. So I think there's a process that districts already do that now. They can be called in. It doesn't have to be this big special technology thing that's built. You just call that in, and it can be as low tech as calling it in to the local health departments. But the Department of Health identified yesterday was a software application that was homegrown, created and built by that organization's technology staff members. And what it does, it doesn't collect the specific who it is, but it just collects numbers about the number of students that are in every specific school and number of staff. And so what you may be hearing about, because that organization, Public Health, will be giving information about how people get an account. They'll have to be created for them. The training of using that application. They'll have to talk about the data quality part of that. You know, who's doing the inspecting of that and staying on top of it. My understanding is that information has to be populated each day by school. They say that all the schools. So I guess every school could enter in directly or come up to the district office. I'm not sure how that works at all. Once again, this is a totally separate kind of thing from the Department of Education that they announced yesterday. And it's a way for local communities to understand where they're at and a large variety of things. I think that was talked about yesterday. Everyone talks about the December 28th date. And that was a goal for schools to wait for to come back to in person. We know that I don't know any district that's coming back 100% in person. So it looks about on average 30 to 40% are staying 100% virtual with that students, and 60, 70% are coming back to an in-person flavor of that. And there's a large variety of ways that they're doing that. So this application also keeps up with who are the students that are virtual, because obviously they're not they're 100% virtual. As big a concern because they're not coming in and outside the school building. So we've tried to understand the processes, but I wanted to give you a heads up about that because they're trying to get a feel for how bad it is or how bad it isn't, and let their own communities make the decision after September 28th. Do they need to shut down or not? Because the best I could tell from Governor Beshear's announcement yesterday, there's no intention from the governor's office, I guess, unless it gets super bad, we have 10 or 15% positivity rates, but not really an intention to say, well, we're going to go another 2 weeks, another month doing it. It's really going to be left up to each school district and each county on what they do or don't do regard to that. So let me pause right there. And Dee, I know you're familiar with it too. So did I cover everything I really should cover? Or did I say something that was incorrect with that?
No, I think you covered everything. And I think the question that comes up is normally, from the state agencies, we do partner with each other. But we do have a report that can help with the student numbers. Even if one person in the district is designated and it wasn't created specifically for this purpose, we already had attendance groups in Infinite Campus to collect information on students. So if that's being entered, the information that's needed can be used on this report. Just clicked a link to the QRC. And David, if you give me a minute, I'll just show them the report real quick.
Let me make sure you have presentation rights.
She does.
Okay, good. All right.
Yep.
Good.
All right.
So this not thou shalt have to. I always want to put that in there. Is within a campus, it does have the students, not the staff, and so districts were doing this to help themselves internally. So if this can help you, for example, even if you make the telephonic call to the department of your local health department, this may be some way for you to do it, but it's not a thou shalt. Like I say, the Department of Education is not leading, not heavily involved. We are a partner with the Department of Public Health, but this is their whole thing, and they are leading it. So we're going to count on them to educate folks in districts and schools about what they're doing. But this is something that you may be using internally that may help you with that, but it's not part of the Department of Public Health, the system they created. It's not connected to it at all. It's not intended to be ever connected to it.
So David, can you see my screen now? The report? Okay, yeah. Great. So this report is just the aggregate detail report that's at Infinite Campus. It would list the districts, at district report, it would list all the schools. And then it does provide three of the numbers. One of the things that you have to enter from the Department of Public Health is the school participation, whether it's 100% in person, 100% remote, or a hybrid situation. This particular districts were all listed as hybrid. We've added total enrollment And then the current positive count is the number of students that are quarantined because of a positive test. And then the current COVID exposure, the number of students that are currently quarantined because of exposure. So those are two numbers they need about students. They need the same numbers for the staff. We don't have staff numbers, but you do at your districts. But hopefully this will help maybe make this one person's responsibility to just enter this information for the district. It does have to be entered daily, Monday through Friday, from what they was said yesterday. So this can help. The detail report that goes along with this provides student level names and things like that. So if there needs to be a checkpoint to make sure the local department, the local health department's been notified, that report can be used to verify that all the names that or all the students that should have been reported have been. So these two reports we hope you find are helpful. This is only going to be as accurate as the information that's put into Infinite Campus. School participation is entered in as a custom tab that's new. And then these are attendance groups that are being entered based on reports by parents or students on their impact of the students.
So I'll close it with, I can't emphasize enough that what is being done is being led by the Department of Public Health. This is just a nice to have internal. They're aware that Infinite Campus has the capabilities. They want to go with they being the Department of Public Health with their homegrown created system, and it doesn't have any details of it. They don't want specific information about specific student names. So there's two different organizations. If you're just kind of being aware of this, which I suspect a high percentage of you are, there's your local health department, and then there's a state agency that's outside the Department of Education called the Department of Public Health. The Department of Public Health just wants numbers. They don't want specifics about names of anybody, of teachers or students. They just are trying to get a count of numbers so they can populate this homegrown system they build that shows the maps and does the color coding that they talked about yesterday. What Dee Dee's talking about is only something, it's totally 100% optional. It does not have any kind of technology connection, interoperability. It's not something being automatically sent from what you're populating and sent to the Department of Public Health. Not at all. This is just something that you could use, optional, 100% optional. I can't say that enough. If you want to use it to help you do that, but you don't have to use any of it. You can use whatever method that you're coming up with to report it to your local health department, and separately just report something numbers, the generic numbers, not the specifics to your local health department. So what I saw yesterday, and I'd read through it, there was an emergency reg that was put in place by Department of Public Health. There was already somewhat, what I could tell, laws in place and regs in place about the responsibility for someone when there's a highly contagious disease to report it to your local health department. And we know the importance with data quality that we've talked about before, but it's always, worth talking about is, it's one thing to report it, but, what are the assurances there'll be high data quality? And we do know the number one type of thing to have any kind of probability of high data quality is there's a law or reg around it. Typically, if you don't have a law or reg around requiring data, is you're going to have a tough time collecting it from 171 districts. You may get it from a third of them or 20% of them, but not 100, all of them. So I think they've taken a look at what logs and regs are in place, that this is a requirement. The second one is, of data quality is there, what is the plus and minus of it? There's a reward or penalty. And obviously the reward to districts is just knowing themselves is what they have, and their parents and their community what they have and don't have regarding COVID-19. And the third one to as a predictor of high data quality, does the district see added value to it? So even if there's a law in place or reg in place, and there's rewards and penalties in place, the biggest piece of determining data quality is, does the district see added value to them? Because it can overcome there not being a law in place. We need somebody to mute there that's not muted. So we can have our muters. Can we have one of our muters find that whoever's talking and mute them?
Yeah, trying to find them.
Okay.
Found them.
All right, good. Just a reminder, if you're on here, you gotta mute if you're you can forget about it. So the third most important part of data quality is, do you see added value to this district? Because they're going to keep that up, even if there's a law around it, rewards and penalties. And so, example of that is average daily attendance. Districts get money based upon average daily attendance, so they want that to be as accurate as possible, and they definitely see added value to that. So we talked about the importance of, do districts see the added value of this, and you all have to determine that with your district. Number 4, do you have someone inspecting it daily? And then at the state level, that won't be at the KD level, it'll be Department of Public Health level. Do they have someone staying on top of it, inspecting it daily? So, that's a common thing, is just educating folks on high data quality. So it's important just not, for the public to be aware of it, but for it to be accurate. Because if it's only 10% accurate, then it's not going to be of very much use to folks. So I wanted you aware of that. That was a pretty big, they spent a good amount of time on that during the press conference yesterday. I suspect the newspapers had a good portion of that. So let me pause right there with everything we've talked about. Well, go ahead, Dee Dee, if you want to add something.
I just want to add one thing on this report. It was not ever created for Department of Public Health. It was really created so districts could use this information and have it readily available to post on their own websites or do for their own local reporting if they needed it. So while there's not a required use of this report, entering the information in Infinite Campus is something that's been requested from the Office of Fiscal Operations. So just kind of.
So when you say this report, you're talking about the Infinite Campus report that was to be used internally. Is that correct when you're saying this report?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Infinite Campus report that I showed is definitely optional. You don't have to use it for DPH reporting at all. It was really created to help schools out with their own local reporting, but entering the information in Infinite Campus is not, the optional. It has been requested by another office.
And I know this can get confusing quick there when you say reporting. So there was something created that was available way before any of this requirement by the Department of Public Health, that just to use internally, so you kind of knew. There's these other 2 things that were announced yesterday. They're totally separate from Infinite Campus, that has been created by a separate organization. And we're just making you aware, and they're aware Infinite Campus exists, but they really do want to use their separate homegrown system they've created. So that's the path they'll go down. So let me pause right there. Let me, for those looking for Go Soapbox for me, because I have 10 things going on at the same time here. Can you share with me what's bubbled to the top of that? Do I need to address anything before going on? Those that are watching that for me.
David, I'll be honest with you. There's been a couple of different questions that our staff is answering as we go along.
Okay.
On Go Soapbox. So my recommendation would be you keep plugging forward in the agenda.
Okay, good. So let's spend time, Andy. This is your heads up. We're going to go through questions number 1 through 7. And the reason I want to do that, we're going to talk about the last mile RFP, the status of that, the funding for it, along with last night's Kentucky Tonight statewide broadcast that had 3 superintendents on it, our commissioner on it, and 3 students from districts on it, along with a couple of the other organizations. And they spent a lot of time. Obviously, it's all about technology, but they spent a lot of time on the stuff. Unfortunately, during that broadcast, on the stuff that people don't have versus spending time on what they do have. So let's take a look, Andy. If you could bring up question 1, or I guess it was Marty. Maybe it's you that's doing that. If you could bring up question 1, the results of that in Go Soapbox, and just like any Go Soapbox, and if you don't have it in yet, please do that. You have any time, through the course of this broadcast to fill that out.
And David, we're getting some pretty good responses, but just to push for, if you can get a chance to jump in Go Soapbox and answer those questions. The first couple questions, we have some pretty good responses, and as we move down, it's tailing off a bit. So here's question 1.
So I think this is an important one right here that I see the response to. Here's what, and I'm going to share this with groups. The Common Sense Media, which is an organization that didn't include all the different ways that people can connect. They just included wired connection to the home, not wireless. And there's a wide variety of wireless ways that you can get to the home. And they didn't ask students and parents directly. Give the estimation that 36% average of Kentucky students don't have internet access of any kind at their house. So that's why I stopped at the 35%, because their average is 36%. It shows you how far off that is. And like I say, over the years, this is probably, one of the most aggravating things. That's why I always say, tell your district that your district's all connected to the internet and everybody's connected, because 99% of Kentuckians don't realize that. And unfortunately, every kind of media service that I found over the years, unfortunately, wants to spend time on what's not in place versus talking about first what is in place, and then talking about what's not in place and the proper percentage of that's not in place. I found that over 2 decades. So they always go to a place that doesn't have it, and one of the highest numbers in our state, and it gives the impression that that's exactly what it is in every county in Kentucky. And not that we don't address that one county, but there's one county they always go to, and they always kind of present that one, and they give the impression that that's exactly the way it is in every county in Kentucky, which is incredibly misleading. So I'm always the type of, I don't ignore the 1% type of thing happening. And everything, if something's really wrong, needs to be exposed no matter what percentage it is. But I'm always also interested in people properly portraying what percentage is really broke and not broke. And it helps address and make it doable to address the percentage that's broke. So these numbers are encouraging. And in line to what we thought this was.
David, there's a couple things wrapped into this question that are important that we'd like to call out. Number one, now that we have transitioned from, an opportunity, to guess, right, or to estimate, and we've moved to, and again, we made this transition pre-COVID pandemic. But we've moved to the approach of, and we strongly believe in naming and claiming and trying to get the actual students who do or do not have internet access at home and what that means. And so this question is also reflective of Kentucky's belief in that, right? And our belief that students who have internet access at home have an extreme advantage over those who do not. And so this question reflects that, and it'll be great. So right now we have about 100 districts who have signed off and submitted our digital readiness. And just to pull that topic in, David, real quick, that deadline is coming up. That target, I should say, is coming up pretty quickly. So about 100 districts have submitted, and we've seen a pretty big jump now that we're actually naming and claiming and getting away from an estimate or a guess and getting to a strategy to know with more details. And in our current environment of remote digital distance learning, it's just vital. We all know that. We all agree to that. And coming up with those best strategies to identify is vital.
Thanks, Marty. Let's go number 2. And like I say, if you've not entered it, don't say, I've missed my chance. Please, we still are on another 30 minutes or so. Please enter this in. And we're going to spend some time on this one.
There you go.
Thank you. So the part that we're interested in is also making sure we maximize these funds given that they have an expiration date. So what you'll see if you're a district that's 0 or close to 0, which tells me it's 0, and it's okay to say thanks, but no thanks. We're doing this another way. We don't really need this funding source. I don't want to count on it, because our intention would be to provide that to everyone else. And so you're going to see us try to identify by a certain date the districts that are it's a thanks but no thanks, and there's nothing beyond that. We just don't want that money sitting there and expiring on December 2020 when it could be used by somebody else or for something else. So that's why that's important for us to identify, both give a percentage of folks who are just trying to get a heartbeat of how many people are going to take advantage of this and how much money is it. So that money can be reallocated to others, like this close to 100% and the close to 0%. We may take the close to 0% and give it to the close to 100% and give them even more. And it goes on with everybody else. That's an example, though, the 75%. Obviously they got enough there, but the close to 100% is one that we would say, let's give that to even more to those. Let's say those are 29 separate districts. Let's give that money to those 29 districts. So that's what we're trying to, and that's part of the process of the application process that was sent last Friday with the details of it. And there's a GMAP system. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a planning tool that I know Mike and Amy can talk to you about. But it just gives us a feel. Let's go to question number 3, which is related to this $8 million. So there, you have the option, as we talked about. The purpose of this one is how many of we were really already we're addressing this and are really going to use this funding source, this $8 million, because it can only be spent on last mile. The other $204 million in CARES funds, which was GEAR and ESSER, could be spent on a variety of technology items and even beyond technology. This can only be spent on this. So we're interested in how many are really just going to go back in time and pay for expenses already paid, and how many are going to really, it's going to move the needle for districts that weren't doing it or planning to do it. Because I found, as most of you know, before this pandemic, we were really encouraging districts to stay away from this. This was a local district. This was a local community issue to solve. We know this is a really unique school year. We hope next school year is not like this, to where there may have to be providing that last mile internet for the students, particularly low income students that currently don't have it. So Mike, I'll let you, you're the one that kind of wrote this question. Do you have any comments about what you see in this?
No, I mean, it does show a high percentage are going to be using these funds to address the remaining gap, which is what the priority of the funds is for. I mean, what we really wanted to try to get a feel for was, how many the funds that would be utilized to address the remaining gap. I guess I would say it's kind of equal when you think about it, because 75% or more are showing 44% would be to address the remaining gap. And then the other 2 percentages really contribute toward the middle one. Obviously, there 27% is to kind of equally to address the remaining gap with retroactively getting reimbursement, and then obviously 29% right now showing to address retroactively reimbursing for what they've already done. So again, the funds can be used for both. But we just the priority is that the funds are to be addressed to address the remaining gap, and we just wanted to get a feel for kind of what that looked like as it plays out.
Okay,
David, there was a question that's bubbled up referencing district leaders not sure yet about their specific allocation, and I know we mentioned it, but it might want to mention that again.
Okay, it's based on your free and reduced lunch students. It's how much per student, Mike?
It's $20 and some change. I've got this
like 2038, something like 2038, something.
Yeah,
like
$20.38, I believe the change, and that's per your eligible free and reduced lunch count.
Income eligible students.
Yeah, the income eligible based on free and reduced lunch. So that's the calculation, and that information will be in the GMAP system when you go into it. The KEs can give you an idea of what that looks like for your districts right now. We did do a kind of a calculation on that, and that again is populated in the GMAP system, which you will be able to begin accessing, I think, tomorrow. I know we've got a follow-up communication from the note that went out in the commissioner's Monday message to the superintendents yesterday. Basically talked about this topic. It identified that there would be the more detailed message coming out by no later than tomorrow, Wednesday, to the finance officers and to the CIOs, the technology leaders in the districts, which is going to provide the details of getting into the GMAP system to complete your plan, to submit to complete the information required for your plan about participation. And I'll go ahead while I'm talking about that. The plans will need to be submitted no later than September the 30th. You can submit them obviously sooner than that, and we would encourage you to do so. but they will be required to be submitted no later than September 30th. That will be the foreshore date when we will know districts that are choosing to opt out, that they, they don't have a need to try to utilize these funds right now. And therefore, we will have a better idea of the dollar amount that can be redistributed to and made available to other districts that are and still do have a need, are participating and still do have a need, as you were speaking to earlier, David.
Thanks. And GMAP has been used in the CARE. So the other $204 million that was sent by districts, we just filed the same format. And so this $8 million following, so this was nothing new. We were just trying to say, how can we take advantage of something that's already in place, some process already in place. So finance officers and the Department of Education and school districts are familiar with GMAP because they had to do all the assurances and the planning that was part of the original $204 million that was available to all districts. So this other $8 million just filed that. We were hoping it didn't require additional steps, separate step, but given it's specifically only for the last mile to the student, and the other funding sources could be spent on that too. The other $204 million could be spent on that, but not exclusively on that. They wanted to be a separate item in there. And you will see in there, there's an emphasis on just not going back and paying for previous costs, but you got to address the students that don't currently have it before you go back and pay for costs you've been paying since March 1st with that portion, your portion of the $8 million, because we didn't want you to have, 3% of your students done. You went back and you paid for all your current costs, but you still had a percentage of students not done. So that's definitely one of the requirements of it. Let's go to question 4. I think these are about the end devices and trying to get a feel for it.
You see that?
Yes, you see it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so
This is pretty much what we expected based on just in general digital readiness that we've seen year over year, David. We've identified and we've targeted for the last, I want to say 7 or 8 years now, what we refer to as next gen type of mobility, next gen devices with mobility, and this fits right in line with that target.
Yeah, and the biggest the districts that were more likely to have a 1-to-1. Looks like you came off, Marty, going to something. I don't know what happened there. The districts that most likely were to have 1-to-1 would be at the high school level. That's what we've seen the growth in. So that number, and we're going to have very close to a 1-to-1 mobile level when this pandemic is over, because districts are using a variety of methods to provide devices to them. It's not going to be 100% perfect. As you saw there's a percentage of districts that won't have that, but we're going to have a much higher percentage that are 1-to-1, given all the CARES funding and the emphasis on addressing that to where it wasn't really before a district tried to do that. Yeah. So that, and always we're interested in the ones to where, I'm interested on both sides of it, the ones that have a very high percentage, and who are the 8 districts that feel like they're going to have more than 35%. What is going on there to where they don't have that? And is it okay? It may be okay that they're not, but definitely when you're having a pandemic to where even going back to in person, which has happened already, and I think I saw the graph last night in Kentucky tonight. It seemed like there was 42 districts that have gone back earlier than September 28th, but we know a portion of them, 30% of them are doing virtual. If there's an outbreak of COVID in that school or in the school, it could push districts back to 100% virtual for X period of time. So they'll be addressing this. So it'll keep coming up. Let's go to question 5. So that was the high school. Let's see middle school and elementary school next. Because we know elementary school typically has project-based learning. And I anticipated the middle school being similar to the high school. At the middle school, I'm interested in elementary school, because particularly at younger grades, there's project-based learning where they're rotating around. Typically, those have been desktops over the years, and I know districts are trying to address that. Marty, you were going to say something?
Just a couple points. One, just to emphasize, even with our 30 to 40 districts who are in going back in person earlier than normal, we recognize that that's still a hybrid in many cases. It's still kind of a hybrid approach where we do have groups of students who are online, remote, and distant.
That's why we say
David,
40% of them. And I always will. And the Covington superintendent did a good job last night with that one, because he said he said even though we're talking about in person, we're talking about still a good 30-40% are still virtual. What other point we're going to make with it?
Well, just a comparison with high school and middle school in this specific question, question 4 and question 5, that we would have expected that the middle school, be more in line with the high school. So this is interesting to us that essentially what we're seeing here is that high school, more than 35%, 8 districts said for high school students did not have, and only 3 districts for middle school. So that's an interesting.
That is interesting. So I don't know what that means or doesn't mean, because I would have actually expected this one for the high school and then the other one for the middle school. So let's say you have time to go in there and let's go to question 6. Yeah, I'm interested to see what the elementaries say. And this is not surprising because they were the ones that had probably one of the highest percentage of desktops in their schools, and it's just in their classrooms.
Yeah, this is what we would expect. So this is extremely helpful.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what 7 was. What was question 7? Was it related to this one, or was it totally something different?
Different. This was a school report card.
Yeah, let's wait on that one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think one of we asked the questions last time about it. What, the percentage that don't have it, how much of that is a money issue, and how much of that you're waiting them to get in issue? And once again, going back to the Covington superintendent, they were trying to address their the elementary school. But there's a shipment they're still waiting on, which when I asked, I think it was last week or the week before last, on average is about 10% you've ordered something and it's not coming in. Obviously, some of you will have much higher and lower than that, but on average, it's about 10% remaining to not coming in. And so part of this is just making sure you're having a discussion with your superintendent and other folks. The reason I sent that is around this time, there's been incredible pressure to address, since there's such a dependence on virtual, is the what we have in the school and also what the students don't have outside the school building. And so we want to just make sure people are familiar with all those funding sources. And so it's a good chance to talk about the RFP itself. That was announced, the $8 million initiative that, again, we talked about the money that expires here soon. Was announced back on August 25th. Issued an RFP that same day. During this past Friday and over the weekend, we had our first wave of bid responses, and contracts are moving forward to put that in place. Obviously, districts have the choice to use local contracts they put in place or use this state contract. This is not a KETS master plan line item, so these are not KETS product standards in the traditional sense. This was just putting together a purchasing mechanism for those that don't have it, or maybe using the leverage of the state contract to put in place. We did have one. The goal was to get down to $10. In cost, to close to that. And pretty high uploads and download speeds, and no cost for the in-device services, whatever it would take. And I know we had one. I don't think it's been officially announced, Mike, that we had one that. One wireless provider, maybe there's another one. There was a special offer they're providing. I don't think those contracts are in place or announced yet. So
as of this morning, those contracts are not finalized yet or not posted yet. So yeah, we've got several that will be getting posted anytime, maybe today. And like I say, there's a few of them that certainly will be of interest.
I know the goal was today that we said September 15th when we initially started this. So it's good that we've actually progressed down here. And so our goal is to get, with that one, all the major wireless providers that are out there, satellite providers and that are that's also wireless and also gets some last mile wired in a location to where, wired option works better. And this is for the school districts to pick from. But I was encouraged, one of the major providers did get down to that $10 per student per month. And definitely I'm anxious to announce that one out of all of them. Did have some curious ones with last mile wire that gave some pretty high costs that I'm not sure why they did that, because I'm not sure anybody will select that, and I'm not sure they understand how competitive this one is when they submitted those. But you'll see a listing of those, and vendors have all the way up till, is it November, December, Mike? I'm trying to remember, to submit bids, and we knew there were some of them take longer time to work through.
Yeah, this bid will remain open for vendors to respond to through the 1st of December.
Yeah, so we understood some of them was going to take longer in their bureaucracy to try to get it down to $10 or close to it with all the things that we're asking for, but we're hoping they can push through that one. Is there anything else we need to mention about this? Is once again, there's about $212 million that can help districts address the last mile to the student. I don't say to the home, because some students may not go all the way to the home. They may have to go to location. I know some have done firehouses. There's been other organizations that have offered it, and Wi-Fi buses and the mobile hotspots that are separate, and even in the phones. And so there's a large variety of options that districts can select from, that trying to get it out there, but just trying to make sure you're aware of, and trying to explain it to your staff about why we get involved with. Obviously, the part that Phil talked about was important. So as school provided devices go home, along with school provided internet service, like a hotspot, a mobile hotspot, districts are interested in meeting the state law requirements of, since the district is providing the internet service to the home, just not the device, but now the internet service, of making sure that device is only going to appropriate sites that the district has picked through the internet content management system, and no one else is really on it the best they can manage that. So pleased so far with that one, and I don't know, you can take a look, go soapbox questions. Are there any that are coming after that before I go to the next topic? If nothing major, last night, go ahead.
Well, Dave, just to recognize some comments that we've received and that connect to some, when we think about access at home, certainly last mile, there was a question. And I want to, if I can, address a couple of different comments here, but there was a question about from Nicole in Henry County. The question was $10 per student per month, or is it per household? And I know we've addressed that in several different ways, but if you could speak to that again, that'd be great.
It's not a household. So you all have the choice. This is not a Katie says thou shalt. So if you have 3 students, and this was somewhat talked about last night in the Kentucky the Tonight show, is each one can have their own hotspot, and they may be in a situation when the siblings goes and does their schoolwork at another location beyond the home, or has to go there. So you can take a look at them. It's the way the district wants to implement them. It's not the way KDs will implement them. So you'll see the options. So it's $10 per month, per, it's really, I would say, per device, per child. Obviously, a hotspot, you're familiar with separate hotspots, can be shared by multiple people in a household, but mainly let's say it's for the student. It's not for the whole household, and we're very clear it's not a whole household solution. It's not for all the parents to get on it and all the adults. It's only for the student to do schoolwork on it. So it's $10 per month, per, just like any contract you sign, is per that hotspot device.
Yeah, David, I think that's the way we want to speak to it, is the pricing that we requested for providers to get to was a $10 per device, per service, if you will. And whether a family with K through 12 students would need multiple devices to appropriately address their multiple students, or whether they would be able to share those, would be up to the district and the families, the students, to decide how they would do that. I want to clarify, based on a question I've seen in Go Soapbox about how to get started, and I mentioned earlier, which I'll kind of reiterate, tomorrow there will be a message come out that provides the details on accessing the grant management application system, the GMAP system, that will allow districts to get in to see the detailed guidance on supplying their plan, and they're including a budget and their plan for utilizing the $8 million. It will also provide them their very specific up to dollar amount allocation that is available to them. So the getting started on it will be to get in, to look at that detail, get into the GMAP system and see what's needs to be submitted. We certainly worked with our partners in our finance office to keep it as simple as we could, but yet with like anything, any grant program, any funding program, there are some requirements and details that have to be provided. And obviously, I would say a lot of those is being beneficial, but we did try to keep it as simple as possible so that it's not a painful experience to be able to get access to those funds.
Thanks.
And just to add on, I really love the way David, you and Mike have referred to this as last mile internet to the student, right? And that's our emphasis, that if students are with grandma and grandpa during the day because mom and dad are at work, then that internet goes with the student as opposed to tied to a specific address or location.
Or they're homeless. We have a number of homeless students. We have
right.
students that are from split parents, and so they're there. They're going back and forth. So it really, the mobile solution works best. But there'll be last mile wired. But we suspect 97% of any purchases made off that contract will be for wireless solutions. But we wanted, for the extreme rare 5% or less situations, that there was wired options on there.
Also, just recognize some comments that have been made. Last month we asked about this situation of having orders in place for devices, because again, when we think of access at home, we think about device. We know that that's also plus last mile internet, but it's also access to great content. And so those three pieces. But from a device perspective, we asked last month about some issues that we had heard where districts were having trouble getting orders completed and shipped. And so since then, we've, Jeremy in Nicholas County and also Dale and Paducah have shared that they now are seeing some of those issues. Jeremy mentioned that 85% of his students do not have devices, and they're ordered, they're just not shipped yet. And so we'll continue to watch that and be able to. I'm
assuming that's 85% that don't currently have it. They're waiting
right.
on, because it's not 85% of all students. Those that currently have it. Don't have. I know that I heard Superintendent Garrison mention last night on the Kentucky Tonight that they went and they rented items from a company until there's this last shipment, this last 10% shipments coming in. So I did have a chance to, and I don't know, it was part of the last time I asked all the districts. On average, it was about 10% overall. And I know there's certain situations where it's more than that.
And Dale mentioned that they've had to punt a bit and loan out devices that were not intended for that purpose, but until their shipments do come in. Yep. Okay.
I encourage you to watch. If you go to KT, you can watch the Kentucky Tonight show. I thought our new superintendent our new commissioner of education did an excellent job for his first day on the job, which was yesterday. So he did I liked his responses in a large way, because he was, he really set the proportionality of this is not a 90% broke or 40% broke. It's actually much smaller than that. As far as the devices and the internet access, the much bigger issue, which I think he's right on target, is do they have the proper support structure, the people structure at home to make sure they're staying focused on academics during this time? I do think that is, he was right on target with that issue as he's taking a look at, what are the kind of things we need to work on. The other one I really liked is, and I do think this helps out folks, because I think the question was asked in a way to get kind of a woe is me response. But instead he says, what is the skill sets that students are learning? And while this is always ideal to be in person for 99% of the students, they're learning agility, and they're learning that we're going to be immersed in a digital society for quite some time. just that skill set to be able to work and thrive in that environment is a skill set that's going to go on after this pandemic ends. So I thought that response was really good. He also talked about the variety of ways that districts are using to address the last mile to the student, whether they go to a centralized, a location beyond the school building, like a firehouse or some other business that's there, or the hotspot solution. So I thought they did a good job. All the superintendents, we had the superintendent from Jefferson County, Christian County, and Covington. They did theirs was outstanding. It wasn't, look, half of it was technology, even though people were told ahead of time it was going to be very little on it. It was about half the show on that one. Then the students from Anderson County, Floyd County, and Breathitt County did a good job. You got a clip of them talking about it. So I encourage you to take a look at it. If you go to KET, Kentucky Educational Television, they'll show you when the next copy of that broadcast was made. So I thought it was well done. For any, I don't know if our staff to watch, anyone else, did I miss anything major? So I just go on to the next topic. I think that it speaks for itself last night. Okay, I'll just move on. DD school report card update.
Yes, we have in the middle of school report card data entry and data review period right now. We've extended that from what was originally August 31st to September 25th. We've looking at it today. We've got about 30% of the districts have approved their domains, and I think are in good shape. The others probably are still working on it. The one area that tends to be of most interest to this group is the technology area. You want to pull up number 7?
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
I looked at the numbers today. It looked like we were right at about 50% of the districts have entered their technology data. You can be involved in that. I don't know, I can't say how it works at every single district, but one of the things that we found last year is that it really worked better if the CIOs and technology folks were involved in the collection so that it aligned better to the digital readiness report. So I know there's, we've got quite a few people that are here that are indicating that they are involved and kind of know the status, and that's a good thing. If you've not been involved in the past, it might be something you want to take a look at to see what data is being entered into the school report card collection tool on technology. Yes,
Dee, if I can, we've cited two opportunities there. Either provide the actual numbers directly, the answers to the questions at the school level directly to school leaders, or a better option that was cited by districts last year was to just input those numbers for each and every school in your district. So those are the two best practices that we've cited in the past.
Right. So, as far as the school report card timeline, this was just one component of it. We do have a school profile report too, which you might not be as involved in. That's question number 8. That is due by October 1st. This is not a KDE mandate. This is a KRS. Legislature, has requested this report to be available October 1st. It does get released. Excuse me. Oh, somebody's not muted.
Yeah.
So it does get released with the school report card from a KDE DE purpose, but its signature process and all that is really to be taken care of locally and available in the district board office.
So maybe there's a strange smell.
So
someone needs to be muted, or I can go mute all and mute them. By the time we need to be muted.
So
you got to remember, you may not realize that you're on. If you got your mic on, it's just easier. And I know people say, I'm embarrassed to say you're talking, your mic's off. It's easier just to turn all your mics off.
We go in, we took a batch, we bombed the place.
all
Go ahead.
right. Okay, great. So those that work does continue. The public release date of the school report card right now we're still saying mid-October. Tentatively, we're planning for October 14th, which is just a month away. So having everything done by the end of by the September 25th allows KDE to take some additional reviews, reach out to districts that need maybe some items that don't look quite right, anything like that, to try to help with quality. review at our level. If you're seeing huge issues with being able to meet a September 25th deadline, and you feel like your district's going to need more time, there is a question out there. Just provide some input into what needs to be considered. We have some federal requirements on when this has to be released, and some other considerations for timing of other data reporting that's needed to be done and associated with this. But we are looking for continued input into knowing that everybody's got a lot on their plates. We don't want to be unreasonable. We've extended an additional month at this point, but if we need to look at it further, we're willing to have that conversation. Then beyond that, Dave, I'm just going to mention real quick some other COVID assistance that we've done, and then I'll be done. We've mentioned the school participation tab. We've mentioned the attendance groups already earlier. There is a new attendance code that got added in Infinite Campus at the request of DPPs, so that will help with additional tracking for COVID attendance. Blended learning really needs to be turned on for tracking participation. I think some districts are still struggling with that. Really continue to reach out to Infinite Campus if you need assistance with that setup. There is a new state flag that's being used to identify students that have a mask waiver. So be aware of that additional tool. There is an ad hoc report available to kind of pull that information together on which students have that mask waiver. There's some additional ad hoc filters that have been released to help with tracking the students diagnosed and quarantined. Also the students with a positive temperature screening. So just be aware that those tools are available. If there's other things that you're really seeing that are needed and you're struggling with something, reach out to us. It may be possible that we can create something at the state level and make it available to all districts and schools much easier than you can do it yourself. The early warning functionality, that tool is now available from a kindergarten through 12th grade. It had been limited to middle and high school in the past, so that's something new. We've got a couple training opportunities for counselors on E-Transcripts. One of them is today, and the other one is October the 13th. So help your counselors be aware of that. They should have gotten some notices directly from Parchment too. So that's a quick overview, David, of some of the data and the Infinite Campus items.
And Jody, I saw just as a point that the last mile RFPs we're doing are 100% optional for districts to use or not use. We're just trying to put something in place in case you don't have an option or you like something to take a look at. It is not a catch product standard. It's not a thou shalt. So it's just something that we're trying to do, go above and beyond the call of duty to try to put some options available there for districts. The intention is for the last mile for students that currently have it from low-income households. So, I saw a question, you don't have to be a hotspot device. They can be in a location. I give the example of fire departments. If there was a cost to do that, this is not a whole community solution, so it's not paying for that. It's exclusively, and I want to emphasize, exclusively 100% for Kentucky K-12 students and no one else on there. So whatever solutions you're coming up with, it's got to be for that. And to use the last mile, the $8 million, it's got to be exclusively for low-income students from low-income houses. Obviously, the other $204 million in CARES funds could be spent on a variety of students. But the $8 million is exclusively and only for low-income students, no matter where it's at, whether you do a firehouse, wherever you're doing it. Phil, we've talked about some of the good news items.
Just real quickly before you go on, just to clarify that point a little bit more on the fire station question, the example I would use there is a district should look at that as they can use funds, portions of the funds from the $8 million to go to whatever percentage of students that they would be serving through like a firehouse solution that are eligible. So if they're providing a solution through a fire station as an example, and 50% of the kids that are going to be needing to access that are eligible, then they ought to be able to look at that 50% of their cost ought to be eligible to use the $8 million. And I just want to clarify that just a little bit further there. And again, we can follow up and provide some one-on-one kind of advice on that as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So Phil, let's talk about some of the good news. You've already talked about Lightspeed. And I know, for me, and I would have taught back and forth, to me, there's a new era of 24/7 by 365. On Labor Day, there was a school district that was having a volleyball tournament. And because of COVID, just trying to be safe, they are broadcasting out. And I suspect that's going to happen a lot for indoor sporting events. I think outdoor, what I found is even though there's not that many people that are attending for good reasons, it is a lot safer to do almost anything outdoor. But as you move to indoor and you take a look at the ventilation systems, you get much more concerned. So I do see, volleyball is giving us some insight to what folks are going to be facing in the future about broadcasting out during the evenings. And so, our internet services, our AD services had to be up and operational 24/7, 365 during this next school year. So it's just not the academic top part of the time. It's also, in the learning part of the time, it's also the extracurricular activities part of the time. So I know we've looked at making sure someone's watching those services 24/7 for both the KH3 services and the Active Directory services going forward. And I know we talked about the Lightspeed part, and we always had these 10-ish districts. I call it the 10-ish, to where we talk about trying to have the 4 nines and 5 nines of internet uptime. But we had around 10 districts in our state that did not have that. And so we've been trying to address them, and they're particularly in Western Kentucky. And so what do we do to address them so we have them similar, these 10, and this is not the last mile, kind of thing, because everybody can have fiber cuts, but what is it we're doing for the really the middle mile services? So Phil, I know we've made some progress. Let's talk about the 10-ish districts first, but just so they kind of everyone understands, we're trying to get everyone up to a certain level. And so we have some good news with the 10-ish districts.
Sure. I will say this, David, never in the history of CATS has the network been more important, because you can imagine a school previously, if the internet was down, they could always go to their whiteboard. They had the kids in front of them, right? They could always go to a chalkboard. They could always still continue instruction, even though it wasn't ideal. Today, if the network is not down and you've got kids that are virtual, it's hard to say, okay, well, school's off for you today, because you can't really make that connection. So it's never been more important than it is today. And for me, we are continuously making the network a top priority. It is not a lower priority. It is the priority today. And so in our work, we are watching and making sure that the internet health is in very, very good shape. We're not only watching bandwidth up and down, we're watching the firewalls, Active Directory, the power, and we're doing that during instructional time and non-instructional time. So I'm asking my staff to give me a lot of stats. We're looking at this continuously, and we spent the summer, prepping for a new school year. We did bandwidth upgrades. We did improvement to the power, the UPS. We put in a new switch. But for the 10 districts that we have in not in just Western Kentucky, but we have 10 or 12 school districts that we feel like are in need of some improvements. We've been working with AT&T during the summer to make those improvements, and most of those have been to the middle mile, the routing of the middle mile network. We've either put in some redundant paths, or we've actually moved them to brand new middle mile services. So we continue to do that. We continue with the bandwidth upgrades. We continue with the improvements to all of the network components that I just mentioned. And we're trying to fill those gaps to make sure that we have those covered 365 days a year, 24 hours. So, it's again, it's the priority for me and for the work that our team does. I think you're on mute, David.
I read the New York Times this weekend, and it talked about it wanted to highlight the stuff that wasn't working versus stuff that was, and always gives us perception. So they went around different states. Kentucky wasn't mentioned, but it's always an issue. And I know, we've we usually have certain things happen this time of year we've not had happen. So far, so good. But I appreciate everyone, Phil and your team staff and our district staff that's made that a good experience so far. But we expect it's different, like you're saying, it's 24/7. Phil, anything else on that? We can move to the next item. You done?
Yeah, David. I know we had an issue that was in the news. Dade County, Florida, the school district, very, very large school district, and all of the press that they made. They had a rough start of school from a technology perspective. So, not only DDoS attacks, but they had services that would not scale and would not ramp up to the magnitude that they needed. So, we've had a really good experience, I think, from a network perspective. And we continue to want to make that the case for all of our school districts, not just 10 or 12 that we're trying to make improvements to, but every school district.
Yep. Thank you. Marty, I know we're putting out new digital learning guidelines, and we don't have time to go through it. I just know we want to announce it. I know we had a question about do we think that, how much money will be? I think it's question 9. So I'll let you hit upon those very quickly.
Thanks, David. So just we wanted to mention that we do have brand new digital learning guidelines that are coming in, and just real quickly, it's just they're updated and they're vital for us as we move forward, especially when considering what types of digital tools, services, resources, apps that we're working with students. These are included and superintendent assurances. And so we'll be sending those out and make sure they're accessible on the Katie website. So wanted to point that out. But also we had question 9 and just to call out that this actually aligns with just about the same number of districts that do not feel like they're going to take advantage of the $8 million last mile funding sources. I'm not sure if these are the same districts or if there's a correlation of any sort, but interesting to say the least. And so again, just as David mentioned with the last mile internet funding from CARES Act, this is the Digital Learning Coach Stipend Match Program funding. And if we have funding that is not being leveraged, that we have allocated or set aside for, let's say in this case, 16 districts have responded not likely, then we will reallocate that back to other districts, right? So it'll go towards the same program. It's essentially those who are participating will have access to a bit more money, right? So I wanted to mention that, and David, just to close out on some topics that we had discussed, just to shout out, Stlp Regionals are still on. Look for those, for that information coming out from Jeff Sobolski soon and through our field staff as a whole. Stlp Regionals are still on, and we expect a lot of awesome participation, and we're excited about that. And so some of that work will look different and feel different, but not too different, because we worked through that, worked through some awesome experiences last year to close out the year. And so we're excited about that. Also launching very soon a comprehensive K through 12 computer science plan. Look for that soon. Our libraries are in full swing, and our library leaders are assisting and helping teachers in new ways than ever before. So we're excited about the work going on there. And as always, the work will continue to work with school leadership and teacher leaders through the integration of digital learning, and also in terms of maximizing the effective use of the technologies that we've invested in and that we believe work. So, David, back to you.
Yeah, and just 2 more items real quickly that we have is I don't think there's a time that people are going to be more interested in our digital readiness survey than this year. They've always been interested in it. It's very helpful to have us already, but I know we made great progress with districts already turning that in. For those that are gathering it, is there anything else that we need to make a point here about the digital readiness survey and report getting it in from all 171 districts?
Other than we're as stewards of those data coming in, our field staff are reviewing those as the data comes in. Again, we have about 100 who have submitted, and we're working towards as best as we can to get that kind of in and locked in and completed so that we can start to report on. Because as you mentioned, the emphasis this year is probably heavier than we've seen in quite some time, David, due to funding sources and other types of legislative decisions and others. So,
thanks. Mike, we'll close out with you with the contracts available. We talked about the RFP for the last mile, but we also have, I know the computer systems contract. We have some other ones that are in progress. So if you want to give an update on those.
Yeah, I can run through some of those real quick. The instructional device contracts, we should be seeing those at any moment as far as those becoming available to districts. So be looking for those, and we'll obviously bring attention to those. Server and storage contracts, new server and storage contracts were recently awarded and announced. So I think I mentioned that last time. If not, we'll make sure that we point you to those. Those are all out there on the website. And again, I think we had shared that information. Some ongoing activity. We have a point of sale system with the school community nutrition program that we're working with that they're working to establish. We have the education licensure system that we're working on in the department to put in place. That's an active RFP activity going on. We mentioned the last mile internet to the K through 12 student earlier, and so we expect to see those becoming available and posted to districts. Some upcoming new activity I think everybody's aware of, and we'll be establishing new networking products and services contracts over the next few months. So we'll have those in place. We'll have those in place in time to be available for E-rate filing for the upcoming E-rate filing time period. So those will be in place as well. So we've got a variety of activities and things going on around contracts and RFPs. So we try to keep you all posted, try to keep you aware of where those things are at, so you know what to anticipate.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for staying on here with us. For those that have stayed on, so we'll end right now. Appreciate it. I know everybody's going 1,000 miles an hour like we are during this real emphasis on technology over these next few months and the rest of the school year. I'm going to stay on after we end here. For those that want to stay around, I usually try to do that. I try to simulate as if I was in a face-to-face meeting, which I would be there early and talking to folks and staying around later and talking with folks. So always schedule time when we have in-person meetings to do that, as well as during these times that we're not in person, to try to simulate that the best I can. So once again, thanks for your efforts, and we'll close out the live portion of this, and you can shut down our YouTube broadcast. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck over the next month. We'll talk to you then. Bye.